In the CDs for Ask and It Is Given, you made reference to emotional set points.
Today we called it expectation. Same thing. You get it? In other words, whatever you practice, that's where you hang around. And you have to sort of work to move from it because that's where you've practiced. And so law of attraction is dishing up those kinds of things.
I have several of those which do not serve me well at this point. And in particular, they arise from instances in which I'm having a conversation with my wife and I can suggest something and she can make a counter-suggestion. And that counter-suggestion will often trigger in me a very negative reaction and emotion, which is based on a feeling of criticism of what I had suggested.
Which is based upon a feeling of inadequacy that is the real core set point.
That I understand, and that is absolutely correct. The difficulty lies in the fact that no matter what my emotional state is, I instantly go to a very low emotional state and become very frustrated.
That's a little bit like saying, I have this stack of books and it reached the tipping point, and once it tipped, it completely went over. But there was a point at which it didn't need to tip. I just didn't get on it soon enough.
Well,
so your statement was, well, we know you perceive it to be accurate, but it wasn't accurate because you said, no matter where I am, it always goes there. And that isn't true at all. You have many options along the way to keep it from going there. You just didn't exercise any of those choices. So off it went. Momentum did take it.
I was wondering about that. I considered that as a possibility. And a couple of questions. Yeah, I really did. I didn't know. I thought I might be just perceiving that I was in a good emotional state when I was allowing myself to get away from it.
Everything's relative, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I appreciate that. I think the basis of my question is that my responses occur more rapidly than I realize consciously.
All right, so we want to tell you a story because everything that you're saying is accurate and helpful and everybody gets it. They've all been there. So imagine being in a situation with someone and it has come to physical blows. You're punching each other and you're hurting each other and it's not going to end in a good way no matter what.
I don't do that with my wife, by the way. So you...
Well, she deserves it.
Not at all. Not at all.
But imagine coming to blows with someone and realizing after that happens a few times that if you just don't let yourself go there, that at least it doesn't go as badly as it does if you do let it go there. In other words, before it came to blows, your nose wasn't broken, and that was better than after it came to blows. Before it came to blows, you weren't in jail. And that was better. And that was better than after it came, and so on. So imagine pulling back from that just to avoid where it's inevitably going to go. Now, in the same way, imagine, rather than in the same way of pulling your fist back, imagine pulling your words back and just not letting it go there, so that it was better. It was better that it didn't go there because it was going in the direction that you didn't want. And then take it further and imagine pulling your thoughts back. Now, that all sounds great, doesn't it? Theoretically, it just seems like if you had any reasonable control of yourselves or any reasonable willpower that you could avoid that momentum. But law of attraction is this powerful law that is dishing up for you the adrenaline, the ideas. In other words, you know how when you're arguing with someone or even debating someone or even disagreeing with someone, that the surer you are about what you know, suddenly the surer they are about what they know. It's almost like they get their certainty from you. It's almost like the surer you are, the more fuel you give them. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more and more. Well, what's really happening is you're using them as your excuse to get further and further and further from who you are. And that relativity that we were talking about makes you feel worse and worse and worse and worse. So a person could say, Abraham, I'm having these conversations with my wife and she keeps making me mad. And we would say, no, she doesn't.
Right.
And pretty soon you're wanting to beat us up because it feels like that's what's making you mad. And what we're pointing out is what's making you mad is the relativity, the vibrational relationship between you and you. So now let's get back to this fists drawing in and words drawing in. So it seems that a person with discipline or willpower would never let it come to blows, or would never let it come to an argument, or wouldn't let it get started to begin with. We can feel you sort of beating up on yourself. Esther really doesn't like it when she starts down a negative trail. She knows better, and it irritates her that she continues to do it. And we say to her and to all of you, let yourself off the hook. Once the momentum is there, that law of attraction thing is strong. And to say, I'm not going to think about that thing that I'm thinking about is really kind of ridiculous because it's already active, it's already there. So here is the powerful suggestion that we are inserting into this dialogue these days. When you are outside the vortex, vibrating, we're beating the drum, vibrating on the end of the stick where you know what you don't want, so that's the point of attraction that you've got going on. Even though you're launching all of these rockets of desire, this is still the arena from which you are drawing your thoughts. And to say, I'm going to stop doing that all of a sudden, if you don't have some practice thought that makes it easy, if you haven't built some bridges that makes it easy for you to do that, you're not going to do it in that moment. We've written that Ask and It Is Given book that you were talking about. In the back of that book are 22 processes to help you realize where you are along that emotional scale so that you can apply a process that may make it easier for you to move to the next space and the next space and the next space. But the reality of it is where you are is where you are, and law of attraction is going to keep responding to you where you are. And so it's an interesting thing of how you can get to a new place when you're focused where you are. Now, we want you to understand that the only reason that you're where you are is because you're focused there. It's only the thought in the moment that's holding you there. And if you could change the thought in the moment, you could be at a different place. But that thought in that moment is pretty compelling. Just like you were thinking about it and now you're talking about it and now you're fighting about it. In other words, it's a sort of compelling thing. So here is the approach that we're encouraging. That argument can't last, even if it came to blows. It's going to end. The sun's going to go down and the sun's going to come up and the environment around you is going to change and the intensity of that point of attraction is going to change too. In other words, there's going to be a time when it's easier for you to make that transition than right now in the middle of all that momentum. And that's when you want to do the work. It's like when you try to change in the middle of strong momentum, it backlashes on you because all it does, in the same way that if you're arguing with someone else and the more points they make, the stronger you dig in. When you dig in argument with yourself, you just beat yourself up. Because you become more defensive, don't you?
Yes.
And that's what's going on with the conversation with your mate. You become defensive, but it's not defending yourself against her that's causing the negative emotion. It's the defending against who you really are and what you really want. Are you following this a bit? So here's the solution. So, time's going to pass. You say time heals some wounds. So, eventually, and sooner than later, in most cases, you're going to find yourself in the vortex. Something's going to make your heart feel lighter. You're going to hear a song that picks you up. You're going to see the face of a child or a dog, or you're going to see something beautiful in nature. You're going to have a memory come across your mind, or you're going to wake up and for just a moment, you're not going to be remembering where you were vibrationally and out of the vortex before. You are in the vortex frequently, more frequently than you know that you are. And that is when you want to do 100% of your affirming. of what you want. Rather than trying to fix it from that place of realizing that it's off, if you watch for an opportunity when you're feeling better, and that's the moment that you begin to softly affirm good things, what begins to happen is you begin to practice the vibration of alignment, or you begin to practice the state of non-resistance until it becomes the strongest vibration that you've got going on. In other words, you can reach the place where you're so mostly in alignment that your life just goes really, 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 really well, and your expectation then becomes easier and easier to maintain. And to take that a little further, we want to say to you that when you stand in the vortex on a more regular basis, everything that is outside the vortex, or everything that is manifested that is less than what you want, feels different. It's like having your sea legs. It's like having good shock absorbers. You're just not bothered by things that bother you when you're not in the vortex. When people give us conversation such as you did, in the past we have sometimes said, but what's really bothering you? And what's really bothering you? In other words, it's not that conversation. It was a vibration that came before and came before and came before. We've been saying about doctors and scientists that when they stop looking for cures and begin looking for the vibrational cause or the vibrational discord, then they'll really be onto something. And now we are taking it even further by saying, you really cannot poke around at a problem without, in the moment of poking around at the problem, making it more. It's just a fact of law of attraction. So when you get it that poking around at the problem is really not such a bad thing because it's causing a better solution, and then you use anything in your power to get into the vortex, which usually means stay off the subject of the issues that always take you out of the vortex. In other words, aren't those issues things that you've thought about a lot and discussed and debated and read about and worried about and stewed about and thought about? Aren't they those things that you've practiced into such vibrational activity or activeness that they're rampant in your vibration? And we just want to say to you, the way to clean up your vibration is from inside the vortex. The way to clean it up is from inside the vortex. And now let us give you the definition of cleaning up your vibration. You can't clean up a vibration. You cannot clean up a vibration. You can't clean it up because your attention to it messes it up. Your attention to it makes it bigger. It just gets bigger and bigger. It's like, I'm going to clean this fire up with gasoline. I think I'll clean up this fire with gasoline. I'll just put more fuel on it. And we say, that's not logical, is it? The way you clean it up is by withdrawing from it. The way you clean up a vibration is by activating another vibration. So let's say that you're in the vortex and you got in there because you've been thinking about general well-being, and you like the idea of being the creator of your own reality, and you like the feeling of resonance that you're beginning to feel about the power of your own creation, and you really like the idea of being able to direct your mind and affect your experience. Now feel how general these statements are. You like the idea of law of attraction, and you like the idea of managing law of attraction, and you like looking around this planet and realizing that the well-being is really rampant in comparison with the not well-being, and you've had a particularly good day, and you've been enjoying a particularly wonderful drive, and it's a particularly comfortable environment, and the vista has been particularly beautiful, and you had a particularly good conversation with someone that was satisfying. And so it's easy to be in the vortex and softly and gently and generally milk the feeling of being in the vortex. And then you say, oh, I'm in the vortex. I think I will address the subject of discussions with my wife and my sort of out of control emotional response. Sometimes it comes to that. And as you introduce that thought, the vortex spits you out. Because that thought activated within you something that doesn't let you stay in the vortex. But you were in there longer than you usually are. And so now you're out and you get on with your day. And now something else you find yourself in the vortex. And so now you stay there longer. You stay on general thoughts. You appreciate a little more specifically than you were before. You bask in the feeling of it. Jerry and Esther were at a restaurant the other night in Phoenix, and the environment was so satisfying that they just kept trying to describe, why does this feel so good? Why does this feel so good? They were milking the moment, milking it meaning practicing the in the vortex vibration every chance you get.